Okay, let's see where we are.
How are the Sheva brachas?
I'm sorry?
How are the Sheva brachas so far?
So far, so good. It feels very strange to be on the Chassan side. You're sort of like an outsider, like I'm on their territory, but it's good. During the Shiva, you get to meet each segment of the family, even though you met them at a wedding, but it's like more, it's in a more calm setting.
A little more intimate also.
Yeah.
I always held the Sheva brachas are nicer are more valuable than the weddings.
I think so as well. Yeah.
From an interpersonal point of view.
Yeah. You actually get to speak and meet, get to know the different sides of the family.
Right.
So it is nice to wait. Now, Benzie's brother did a shidduch last night.
Oh, mazel tov.
Someone from Connecticut, I think Muller from Connecticut is the chassan's name.
Mazel tov.
So that was the celebration last night because he's also he's Aiden. He's Aiden by the same freedman.
This happened in Lakewood?
In Lakewood, yeah. Benzie has a brother who was in Lakewood who's also an Aiden by the same freedman that my son's married to. He's a freedman, the son of a freedman whose mother married a freedman, and he also married a freedman. He's like he's a lot of freedmen around him.
That's a lot of Hungarians, let me tell you.
Indeed it is. Okay, so let's see the Mishnah. Nechosim sheyesh lahem achrayis nuknim bekesef b'shtar v'chazava. So nechosim sheyesh lahem achrayis refers to karka. Where did they get this name from? As nechosim sheyesh lahem achrayis. The Rashi says the reason why karka is referred to as nechosim sheyesh lahem achrayis is she'achrayis kol adam. People trust it. People rely on karka. Aloiva. Why do people rely on it? They last forever. And I know that if I have a shibud on karka, I'll be able to collect on it. Metalton can disappear. So how is one going to karka? The kesef, with kinyan kesef, b'shtar, with a star that's written by the owner that my son is sold to you, or b'chazaka, if someone shows ownership, such as he fixes a gate, he walks around the borders, or he locks a gate, these are all acts that show a manifestation of ownership. How about she'ein lahem achrayis, referring to the talflin, ein nikna ela b'mashiach. The only way you can be kind them is b'mashiach, is with pulling them. Nechasim she'ein lahem achrayis, niknem im nechasim sheyesh lahem achrayis. Here is the kinyan agav. When if you want to be kind of metalton, you can be kind by being kind of karka, and all you would have to do is make a kinyan on the karka using the standard kinyanim that one makes on karka. Kesef b'shtar u'v'chazav. And of course, there'll be a huge question as to how exactly this kinyan works, kinyan agav, and the Gemara is going to spend a considerable amount of time focusing on that. There's a halacha that there's never a chiv shvu on karka. However, if there was a chiv shvu triggered because of a metaltlin, we would also allow you to swear on karka once there's already a chiv shvu. And this is, of course, the concept of gilgul shvua, which again the Gemara will elaborate on. Zok tehelu Gemara, bekesef mino. How does we know that you can be koine karka with kesef? So the Gemara offers two solutions. Amar chizki amar kra, sadois bakesef yitnu. So the pasuk of sadois bakesef yitnu is found where zokt the Gemara. I mean, let's see the Taras Shalom. It's found in Yirmiyahu. Sadois bakesef yitnu Then it says Chsoiv B'Sefer V'Chasayim V'Hayd Edim Beres Binyamin V'Shiv Yishalayim V'Ar Yehuda. So this is the Navi in Yirmiyahu telling us that you're going to solace with what? With kesef.
It always bothers me that they bring a raya from Nach, which was written like 800 years after Klal Yisrael got into Eretz Yisrael. And so what did they do till then? They didn't need a raya until then?
I guess the way I always understood it is it was known, it was already known right away by Matan Torah that it works, but and
how is it? In what way was it known?
How was that information proliferated before it was recorded in the Navi? Because the Navi is just recording this is what happened. This is what happened. It must be this works, but it's not really telling us that this can work. It's just recording a fact that they did this.
But how did they figure out what to do until then?
I don't know. Maybe Moshe Rabbeinu told them. Moshe Rabbeinu can't make something up either, so I'm not sure. What makes the Yurkashi even more shver, is we're actually going to bring a pasuk from the Torah as an alternative. So why would the Gemara even entertain bringing a pasuk from Navi if we have a pasuk in the Torah?
Anyway, we learned the whole Kiddushin. We learned out of Kicha Mistei Ephron, right? Why don't we continue using that? We know that money was exchanged.
So let's have a look. That's exactly what the Gemara says later. That's why it's very fair why the Gemara here would rely on the pasuk in Yirmiyahu. Frag the Gemara. Went too far. The very next words in the pasuk after Sados Bekesef Nigu is the Chasav V'Sefer V'Chasayim. So maybe you need a star as well in order to affect the transaction. Zok the Gemara, Iksev Yiknu L'Besoif. If it's a Sados Bekesef V'Chasav V'Sefer V'Chasayim and then Yiknu, that would mean that you need the Kesef and the star to impact the Kinyan. Kiddukamrit. But Hashem D'Chsev Yiknu Meikara. It says Sados Bekesef Yiknu. And only then does the Navi discuss the Kesef, the Sefer V'Chasayim. It's clear that the Kinyan is really Kesef, Kni, and Shtar Raya Balmahu. The star was just recording the incident. It was just recording the transaction. Amar B'Sheishes, V'lo Yishanu El B'Makom Shein Kosin Es Shtar. This that we say that Kinyan Kesef works, that's only in a place where the minig was not to write a star. In a place where they write star, then loikana, it wouldn't be kaina. Why wouldn't it be kaina? Because a person buying it would not be soymech das to make the kinyan until he actually has that star, which is a right. He parish, but if he says no, I'm happy with this to Kesef, then he's showing us that he's going to be having full das to be kind. He had Rav Idi Bar Avin, like Rav Idi Bar Avin, Kizav and Ira, whenever he would buy land, he would say, Ibaina b'kasba ikni, Ibaina b'shtar ikni. I'm doing both kinyanim here, but I'm not yet sure which kinyan I want to rely on. If I decide later that it's the kesef I wanted to rely on, then that would be the kinyan. If I decide later that it's the start that I want to rely on, then that's going to be the kinyan. Why would there be a difference? Zok the Gemara, because if I decide later that I want it to be that the kesef created the kinyan, because if you decide that you want to back out of the deal, for some reason you find that you didn't charge enough, I will say, no, we already made the kinyan kesef, it's chal, and this is an irrevocable deal. But I also have a right to say that I want the star to be the kinyan, because that allows me to back out, because we didn't write a star yet. So I want to have the ability to back out without giving you that option. Let's see Rashi. Lo yishanu nekani b'kasva l'chudei, that kesef alone does the kinyan. Ela b'mokim she'ein regilan l'chtev shtar mechira, only in places where there was no meaning to write a shtar mechira. But if the meaning was to write a shtar mechira, then kesef alone won't be kaina. Lo yikana, why the kibbutz regilan b'hachi lo yisomcha daita d'loikeach? The purchaser does not have das to be mechayiv himself to the kinyan at the nuked shtar until he's holding on to that shtar. The ikar daite liknois ala shtar, and his main focus is on the shtar. But the parish that he said imr tani yikna likasp or yikna stari, so he left himself the choice. So it's like a t'nai. Rabbi Yashav speaks out that this would have to be a t'nai kafel with all of the halachas of t'nai. Iva lahachi amar tavai. Why would he create such a weird scenario? That he had a choice, if he wants to get kesef, can you star, who cares? The answer is so that he should have the option to be able to back out of the deal. But the moicher should not have that option. Also, like the Gemara elaborates, if the moicher says, I don't want this deal, can say, I want that the kesef that I already gave you is kaina and is therefore irrevocable. But if the lekech wants to back out of the deal, let him tell the moicher, any righteous sheikah kaina. I never wanted my kesef to be kaina. Until there's a star here. The chosman shalikabalti a star. As long as I have not yet accepted the star, echsarbi, I want to retain the right to be able to back out of the deal. Okay. So I had a fake memory because I thought the Gemara will also bring the pasuk of Nasati Kesav Asada Kach Mimeni, which is the pasuk by Stay Ephraim, and the Gemara doesn't bring it. So back to David's kasha. I'm not sure why would the Gemara go to a pasuk in Yirmiyahu if the Gemara could have brought a pasuk by Ephraim where it says Nasati Kesav Asada Kach Mimeni. I guess it doesn't say Beferish Aloshna of Kinyan. Okay, let's see the Gemara weiter. Uvishtar, Minolon. How do we know that you can be koina a soda with a star? Ilema mishum dechsiv v'chatzov b'sefer v'chatzayim v'hoyd edim, which is the end of the pasuk from where we learned sodos b'kesef yiknu. Correct Gemara v'amr star raya b'almahu. We asked that kasha earlier. And we wanted to suggest from that pasuk, you should learn that shtar can be a kinyan, and you deflected that raya by saying that there the shtar was just for a raya, and you proved it because the word yiknu is before the kasav b'sefer v'chasayin. Elamehacha. If we're looking for a raya that shtar works to be kind of field, it would be from the ekach es sefer hamikneh, which is also in Yirmiyahu. V'ekach es sefer hamikneh. Rashi says, what do you see from the Ekach HaSefer Mikdah? Alma yesh kinyan af b'sefer levada. Even though, if you look through the psukim there, in fact, the kinyan there was done with kesef, but since the Navi refers to a sefer as a davar hamakneh, so therefore, we know that a shtar would go. Amar Shmuel, lo yishanu ela b'shtar matan. This that the shtar alone creates a kinyan is only by a shtar matana, where the moicher, or it's not a moicher, it's a noisen. He's not looking to be paid. He's not looking for any type of pay. So therefore, with the shtar, he's goimer beliboy to be makna the karka. Aval b'mecher. But if it's a sale, there loikana achitin loidam. There the moicher is not goimer b'daito to complete the sale until he actually has the money. As Rashi says, "Achayit and damim the loy gamar moicher umakna." The moicher is not completely willing to transmit that field at the kabul damim until he receives the money. V'yaf agav the kabul damim, even though he was makabel the money, still boy shtar. He'd still need a shtar to the opinion elahech the parish unless it was spoken out otherwise. Okay, so let's see the Gemara. Masav Rav Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna challenges this halach. Bishtar, the Brisa tells us how it works. Ketzad. Kasav loy ala niyar ayalacheres. Somebody wrote, the moicher, the vendor, the seller writes on a useless shard or on a useless piece of paper. Even though there's no value whatsoever in the actual star, or it will work. It doesn't talk about any type of exchange of money. There it's discussing only writing of the star. So how could you tell me, how could you, Shmuel, tell me that by a mecher, by a mecher, there has to be money exchanging hands as well? The Brisa seems to say that the star alone works for mecher without anything else. Rav Hamnuna asked this kasha, and Rav Hamnuna answers it. It's not Shver and Shmuel, because maybe the type of sale that's discussed in the Brisa, where the moicher is happy to sell this property even before he has the cash in his hands, is b'moicher sadeu mipnei rosa. He was selling a really bad field that he knows he won't be able to find anybody to buy so quickly. So he wants the kinyan to be chal so that it should be irrevocable, even if it means he has to do a VTB. Even if he has to do a vendor take back, and he has to wait for his money, and he has to collect, he still wants the sale to be chal because he's afraid he won't be able to unload this field otherwise. As Rashi says, the moicher is happy that the star alone should affect the kinyan. I just don't want to back out. If I have to wait a little bit until he pays the money, I'll do that. But I don't want him to back out. Rashi Amar b'matana bikesh l'tnua. This case of the Brisa that says, where the star says, Sadi mechurlach, Sadi nesunulach, is in fact only matana. So what is the Lashon Mecher doing here at all? If it's a star matana, it should just say Sadi nesunulach. Why would he write Sadi mechurlach into a star matana? Zakt Gemara, V'alama kazav lo shmecher, k'dei liyapo says koich. To make the sale be better for the receiver, to make the gift better for the receiver of the get. Why is there any benefit to the receiver of the matana to have received it as a mecher rather than as a gift? So for that we have Rashi and Tosfos weigh it. Rav Ashi Omar, Hachmas Nisin b'noise matana Mari. The whole Brisa is speaking about noise matana. V'chula chadahi. It's all one case. V'lav oy katan. It's not telling us how you would write a star mecher versus how you would write a star matana. Regardless, this is only a star matana. He actually writes this full nusach just to give a matana. Sadi b'churlach unasunalach. Why would someone do that? It's l'yabes as koicha, to make the ownership of the mekabel matana that much better. She'im yigvena b'achoyv shal noisen matana mimena. What if the noisen matana owed money, and now the b'achoyv of the noisen comes to seize the property away from the person who received it as a gift? Now what it does is it creates a shibud where the person who received the gift can now come back to the noisen and demand payment. Yoshev alav b'achoyv shal noisen Yoshev alav l'tpoyim imenu dam ma'amafurasha. So I'm giving a gift of this field, and I'm telling the receiver of the gift, I want to give you such a good gift that no matter what happens to this field, I will make sure you retain the value. I will pay you for it. So even if a b'achoyv of mine takes it away, I will pay you back the value of the field. And that happens with a mecher. It wouldn't happen with a matan. So that is what Rashi understands Rabashi's comment. Tosfos, I believe, says a little bit differently. Tosfos says, the Lashon mecher kedei liyabes is koichay. In terms of Tosfos, v'lama kasav lo b'lashon matana. So let him write only mecher. If he's giving away a gift and there's no benefit in the gift component, so just write harezim mechurlach, and you would have all those benefits. Why do both nuschos, both harez sadasu the matana and mecher, why are both required? Bishlam mecher, I understand like Rashi says, mishum achrayis. Why is it better if it says matana? Imishum the b'matana less bay mishum dina bar mitzvah. If you're going to take the advantage is bar mitzvah, what are you going to do if one of the neighbors comes by and tells him you have the right to buy this field? You don't own a field in this neighborhood. I want that field. That only works for a mecher, but for a matana, I'm allowed to give it to anyone I want. So maybe that's why he also wrote Sadan Yisudullah. Zoktosh, that's not a good reason. So Amar Perak HaMakabel, in Perak HaMakabel above Metzi, it says, the matana, the isba achrayis, isba mishum din bar metra. If there's a achrayis in the star matana, there's also a din of din bar metra. And being that he wants to give him a gift with achrayis, so even though it's b'matana, it would still be a din of din bar metra. So once again, what advantage is there in writing anything about the matana? Zok Tosfos v'yeshloimar d'shnei shtaros kosevu. You cannot write in one star, this is a mecher, this is a matana, because it's contradictory. So in fact, you actually write two stars to the receiver of the gift. You write one star that says Sadi Nesudalach, and another star that says Sadi Mefurlach. And therefore, im tzarich lachrayis, if a Balchayv comes and takes it away, then Mar shal mecher. He'll show the star mecher, and therefore it will allow him to go back to the noising and ask for payment. And if there's a neighbor claiming that he had the right to buy it first, Mar shal matana umatzniya shal mecher. He'll show the star matana, and he will not share the star mecher. And this is a little bit shverlich, because Lamaisa, which one is it? Is it like cheating? Is it really a mecher? And then he's going to lie to the person who's coming with a tana bar mitzvah, or is it really a matana, and he's lying to claim a achrayis? So Tosfos says another shot. The Mari Shaper b'shtar echad. It's written in one star. The holocaust of the matana is l'isha emes uchaf. It's because Lamaisa, that's what it is. He puts in mecher because he wants to give him achrayis, but Lamaisa it's a matana. So he's writing the way it is. If Yerushalmi Pirkin, the Yerushalmi writes a different reason why there's an advantage to a star matana. If Yerushalmi Pirkin refers to yipu koyach so matana hainu l'gabi bor v'dus. Normally, moiches sada b'stam. If I sell somebody a field, le'mocher bor v'dus. If there's any cisterns, boiros in the karka, that would not be included in the sale. Of a matana ben yafa noishenakot. When someone gives a matana, he's trying to be generous. He's trying to give. He's trying to be bright. There, he would include it. So that's why he wrote matana, to show that he's including a bor or a dus that's in the property. Uvechazaka. Another method of being koine karka is with doing an action that shows you're an owner. Minolan. Where do we know this from? Amar Chizkiah. Isn't it cute how Chizkiah is telling us about chazaka? Amar Kra. It says in the pasuk, "V'shavu ba'arechem asher tefastem." You will live in the cities that you seized. Rashi says, I'm sorry, not Rashi. The full pasuk is again it's in Yirmiyahu, and it says, "Anihin Yosy mitzvah." And towards the end of the pasuk it says, "V'samu b'klechem v'shavu ba'arechem asher tefastem." You live in the cities that you seized, and we learn a drasha b'met tefastem b'yeshiva. How were you kind of? With what method did you seize ownership of these properties? Simply by living in them, by showing by manifesting your ownership. The very b'shmol tana, we learn it from a pasuk in Sefer Dvarim. It says v'rishtem moisa b'shaftem ba. I think this is in Veschana. How were you yorish the land? B'yeshiva, by living in. So this is what I was referring to earlier when I told David, if we have an alternative from the Torah, why would we look for a Makor in Yirmiyah? I mixed it up. I thought it was like that by Kini Kesef. But by Kini Chazaka, Beferish, the Gemara brings two alternatives. Either a pasuk in Yirmiyah or a pasuk in the Torah. So it's pretty difficult to understand why the Gemara would bother with a pasuk from Yirmiyah when we actually have a pasuk in the Torah that says that chazaka works. Okay, Zog to Gemara. A piece of metaltlin, you could only be koina by taking it. Minola. How do we know this halacha? It says in the pasuk, "V'chisimku mumemkar lamisecha, ikona miyad amisecha, davar anikna miyad liyad." The kinyan is where it's handed from one end to another end. I pull it to me. That is the way the kinyan is affected. Well, the Rabbi Yochanan, the Amar Dvar Torah Mois Kainoi, Rabbi Yochanan said that midaraisa kinyan kesef is kind of even metaltal. There's a gzeira, which we'll get to in a minute, why you need Mashiach. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, or Mois Kainis, Ma'i Kala Meimar, what could you possibly say? What does it mean? By our Mishnah, what did our Mishnah say? That a niknel of Mashiach. Zakt Gemara, Tana Takanta the Rabbanan Katana. Our Tana was telling us the final rule of how it works, which is the Mashiach. The Tana is not talking about theoretical, about the Raisas. The Tana is telling us a practical halacha. Lamaisa, what are you supposed to do if you want to be kind of metaltlin, use Mashiach? Why did Rabbi Yochanan say that there's a gzeira that we don't rely on kesef, even though me'ikra din there is kli kesef? And the answer is very simple. Imagine I'm a wheat merchant and I have a warehouse with wheat in it, and you buy from me $100,000 worth of wheat, and you pay for it, but you didn't pick it up yet. But you did pay for it; it wasn't shipped yet. So I have your money, and I'm holding on to your wheat. And then there's a terrible fire in my warehouse, and all the wheat burns. I'm going to call the purchaser, and I'm going to tell him, I feel so bad for you because your wheat was destroyed in the fire. Why was it your wheat? Because you were koined with kinyan kesef, which is koined midaraisa. That's something that the Rabbanan didn't like. So the Rabbanan made a takana that there's no kinyan until the receiver actually takes it and makes a Mashiach. Now, when I call this fellow and say, your wheat burnt, he says, my wheat didn't burn, your wheat burnt, because I wasn't koined it, because I still didn't take possession of it. Zok tehel gemara vayt. Nechashim sheila machrayis. You could be koined through kinyan agav. Where do you know this halacha of kinyan agav? Amar Chizkiya the Amar Kra. It says vayiten lahem avim matanois. If we look, it's a pasuk in Divrei Yamim. Vayiten lahem avim matanois rabbis. The kesef, the l'sov, the megdanois. How does he give it to them? Im ore mitzudois biYehuda. With, I'm not sure if it's mitzurais, it's mitzurais. Im ore mitzurais biYehuda. Together with fortified land in Yehuda. So we learn very simple. How did the father give them the matanos? How did he be makna to them? How did he transmit it to them? By giving them the fields, which was nechashim sheish lemachrayis, it automatically created a kinyan on all of the metal. So okay, so let's drill down and understand how kinyan agav works. If I am being makna to karka with a conventional kinyan of karka with kesef, shtar, or chazaka, and I also want to sell you my bicycle, so does the bicycle have to be in the land that I'm giving you? Or maybe the bicycle could be anywhere. So does the kinyan agav only work if the bicycle is in the land that I'm transmitting to you? Or does it work? Will you be cutting the bicycle no matter where in the world it is? Amr Rabbi Yosef Tashma. Zok Rabbi Yosef, let's see if we could bring a raya from a brisa. It says in the brisa, Rabbi Kiva Omer, Kaka Kolshu Chayeves Bepeya Ubebikurim. Even if you have a postage stamp sized piece of property, you're chayiv in peya. We're soon going to figure out what can possibly grow on that, where you can give part of it. But the Gemara is going to deal with that later. Ubebikurim. If you have any bikurim to give, we know when you bring bikurim, one of the things you say is al hadam asher nasata li. You have to own land. If you even own a postage stamp sized piece of property, that's enough. Where when you bring Bikurim, you could say, Asher Satali, you gave me property in Eretz Yisrael. What else? What else is a karka kosher good for? The lichtaiv alea prosbul. Let's turn over on top of base. You can write a prosbul. A prosbul you'll only write on a loan that's backed, that's guaranteed by a piece of property. Why is that? Once they made prosbul, why didn't they make it across the board? The answer is they only made a prosbul to be misakin the most standard types of loans. The standard loan is a loan that's backed with karka. A loan that's not backed with karka is a very unusual loan. It does not usually happen. The Rabbanim, when they made it a kind of prosbul, they only applied it to the most common method of borrowing, which is always when there's karka involved. And what's relevant to our sugya is veliknais iman achosim she'ein lo machras. We learned that there's something called kinyan agav. You know how big the piece of property has to be in order to be able to do kinyan agav? The smallest little piece of property, even if it's the size of a postage stamp, the size of a borough park front yard, it's the amount of grass that you would find in the front yard of a house in borough park, even that would be enough to make a kinyan agav. If you hold that kinyan agav only works on metaltlin that's piled up inside the property, exactly what do you expect to be able to put on a postage stamp sized property? You're not going to get much in there. So our kinyan agav is not very valuable at all. Zokta no. Tergumar Rav Shmuel bar Bisna. Hamed Rabbi Yosef. Going to notes b'mach. The smallest property can still hold something. It can hold a needle. You poke a needle into the property, no matter how tiny the property is, it can hold a needle. Amalei Rabbi Yosef, kabastan. What does kabastan mean? Rashi tells us. Siratani, you're upsetting me with what you're saying. Ich will tana lashmina machat. Are you telling me the Tana is trying to tell me a big chiddush that a small piece of property is good for a kinyan agav? The Tana is going to be matriach himself to share us the sale of a needle. It must be that it's kind of large things through kinyan agav. So therefore, it must be that the metaltlin that you're selling with kinyan agav does not have to be in the car, because it can't be just for a needle. Amar Vashi, I don't understand. Man leim malon le'talaba marganisa the shavi alfazuza. This needle might have hanging off of it a beautiful piece of jewelry that's worth thousands of dollars. So don't tell me that the fact that you could only put a needle into this karka because it has to be tvurim boy is not something the Tana would tell us, because it's not a value. It's not the sale and the transfer of a valuable object. To the contrary, anything hanging off this needle, which is in the land, in the tiny piece of land, will be kind of with kinyan agav. And that's very important, because that's teaching us how you can sell very valuable items. It's just by hanging it off the needle that is in like a stake, that's inserted like a stake into the piece of property. You see a chiddush from here. This precious gem that the Gemara is referring to definitely is bigger than the property. It's definitely hanging over into the neighbors. But since it's hanging on the needle, which we'll call the stake, that's firmly implanted into this piece of property, we consider it like it's in that piece of property. So we don't have a raya to our shayla. So the Gemara is looking for an answer to our shayla by kinyan agav. Does the property that I'm selling have to be on that property that I'm being makna, or could the metalton be anywhere in the world? Tashma, let's try a different raya. Rabbi Lozer said, "Ma'aseh b'Meduni ech." There was a person from the city of Meduni. Shahayu b'Yerushalayim. He was in Yerushalayim. Shahayu lay metalton harbe. He owned a lot of metalton. Ubikesh litnim b'matana, and he wanted to give his metalton away as a gift. They told him, there's the only way you could do it. Ein loy takana ad sheyiktem al gabei karka. The only way you could do this is if you're going to be makna the gifts of metaltlin through karka. Rashi told us right away, if we know you can give away metaltlin with kinyan meshicha, with kinyan chalipin, so why was that his only alternative? So the Gemara is going to get to it. But they told him your only option is to give karka away, and then through that there'll be koina the metaltlin that you want to give. So ma'asa, what did this fellow do? Halach v'lokach beis sela samech l'Yerushalayim. He bought a base seller. What does a base seller mean? That's going to change. Rashi says at this point, because what is a base seller? It's karka molei roichav seller shumat beis. It's a piece of property the size of a quarter, very, very tiny. That's one pshat. Rashi says another pshat. It was a rock. There was no land there other than rock. Maybe it was on the piece of the Canadian Shield where there was no soft land. It was all rock, which is not flat, where you definitely can't pile up barrels or sheep upon, which are the nechasim that we're referring to. So what did he do? And he said, this northern portion, Liploini, should belong to my friend Chaim, and along with the karka through Kinyan Agav, Meyatzain Umeyachaviyos, and then Umeis, he died. The Kaimu Estavar, and the Chachamim were Makayim, his words, the Kinyan were. The Amrit Beidin Tzvurim, but if you're going to hold that in order for Kinyan Agav to work, the metaltlin that I'm gifting or that I'm giving have to also be in that piece of property, Beisela Lemai Chazi, a tiny little piece of property the size of a sela, or with rocks on it that it's not smooth land, you can't put anything on there. So you have a raya from here that the Kinyan Agav worked, even though the metaltlin sold as part of this Kinyan Agav was not in the field. For the Gemara, you're making a mistake. Mi savers base sela mamish. You're misunderstanding what this base seller means. It doesn't mean that it was tiny or that there was no place on it. What it means is my seller, the nafesh tuba. It's worth way more than that. It's a big piece of property. So if I'm my korele seller, why would we refer to this property as a base seller? It's the kashik seller. It was on the Canadian Shield. It was a huge piece of land, but it was all hard rock. Because he's not going to go, if all he's using this property for is to transmit metaltlin, why would he buy fertile, high-quality land? He just needs flat land, like a parking lot. So he went and bought the cheapest land, which is land that can't really grow anything, but it was plenty flat, so he was able to pile up tons of goods into it. And through that, he had the Kinyan Agav. So once again, we've deflected our raya. We don't have a raya whether or not the things that he's selling have to be found inside the property. I just want to point out that's going to become relevant later. What exactly did he say? What he said was, Tzvoni zela ploni, I'm giving this karka to ploni. The imai meyatzayni meyachavos. He makes no mention of the word kani. He just uses the word ve'imai. That's going to become something that the Gemara is going to focus on a little bit later. Zok the Gemara weiter.
Yossi, why does this case come after the case with Rav Ashi? It seems like the case with Rav Ashi ends with it works. He hung a pearl on it, and
that could be the case that the Bryce is referring to.
This case, which now casts doubt on the whole thing, it seems like that should have come. Like, why is the Gemara here is ending on a suffix?
We are. That's exactly we are. We're looking for proof as to whether or not the metaltlin have to be in the property, and we have a suffix.
So what's wrong with why is Rav Ashi's answer not acceptable to the Gemara?
It's possible that that's what happened. It is acceptable. It's possible that that's what happened. So it's possible that the case was that it was svurin, but it's also possible that it was not svurin. So therefore, it's inconclusive.
Okay.
Because we need to find a checkmate where it's for sure svurin, it's for sure not svurin. And that we haven't found yet. because we have the option in either case to say it meant that it was Sabur. So let's see if we could find another raya. Tashma, the Amr Rabbi Yehuda. So we're on to our third raya. Tashma, the Amr Rabbi Yehuda, Amr Rav. Ma'aseh Damechot. Once upon a time, Shechala Yerushalayim Kreb Eliezer. Rashi tells us there's a machlokes if only matnash shchiv mara is kiksuvim v'chemesurim dami. If only something that a shchiv mara who's about to die, if only then. Or there's a shita who holds even a shchiv mara has to have a kinyan. So therefore, the Gemara says as follows: either according to Rabbi Eliezer, it was someone who was very sick, and therefore, according to Rabbi Eliezer, Rashi says, according to Rabbi Eliezer, it would need a kinyan, because Rabbi Eliezer holds that even a shchiv mara requires a kinyan. Rashi look Rabbi Eliezer echad bari v'echad besukin ein devar of kayamin b'dibar ela b'kinyan, because Rabbi Eliezer doesn't hold divrei shchiv mara kiksuvim v'chemesurim. So either it was even somebody who was sick, or maybe we're going according to Rabbanan, who hold a divrei shchiv mara would not need a kinyan, and therefore this story had to have occurred with a bari where he needs a kinyan. So the main point is there's a transfer of resources that we want to do, but we need a proper kinyan. He had many metalton, ubikesh litnam b'matana, and he wanted to give him away as a gift. Once again, the same scenario. Amrullah, they told him, Einoi takana, your only way to give away all your metalton is that sheyikneim al gabe kar. If you are marked them a piece of property, and through kinyan agav, they'll be kunyan metalton. So what did this fellow do? Halach v'lokach beis roiva somach l'Yerushalayim. He bought a roiva kav, which is a decent amount of property. V'amar, and he said, now he's giving. In the previous case, he was giving everything to one person. Here, he wants to split up his assets and give some to Moshe and some to Chaim, some to David. So he said, v'amar tevach tevach l'ploini. I'm gifting a square tevach, 6 inches square, to Pliny. Now you could clearly not pile up 100 sheep and 100 barrels in a property that's 6 inches by 6 inches. Umeis, and he died. The armored paying svurin, if you're going to say in order for King Agav to work, the metalton have to be piled up in the property. Exactly how many barrels, how many sheep can you possibly pile up in a 6 inch square property? This person wasn't actually giving the animals. He wasn't actually giving the barrels. He was giving cash. That was the value of that. Cash, you could pile up a lot of cash in a small area. Don't think I'm just fetching to get out of your raya and I'm claiming that it was just cash. I'll prove to you without this kasha, just the price alone on its face has to be speaking where he was gifting cash and not the actual goods. If he actually had those goods, why didn't they just use kinyan chalipin? All he has to do is have that guy give him a shmata, like we do when we sell our chametz. When you lift up the shmata, automatically all of the metalton will be knitted to you. Why in the world does it even need kinyan agav? There's a simpler kinyan, is kinyan chalipin. Zogt Gemara ve'elamai l'dami niknin in hele. So what you're going to say? It must be that it was he's only giving him the cash. Well, if that's the case, ve'elamai l'dami kama then niknin in hele mashiach. So fighter, why does he need the kinyan agav to be makna cash to the recipient? The recipient can make mashiach on the cash. Ella, what are you going to tell me? You know why? We couldn't use kinyan mashiach. Ella the lesser the makabel matana. What are you going to tell me? That the makabel matana is not here, and if the makabel matana is not here, he couldn't possibly have done Mashiach. So therefore, we're saying that it was only cash. Why was it cash? Because if it was the actual things, he could have made Chalipin. That's not a reason why it couldn't be the actual thing, because if it's cash, he also could have done Mashiach. So what are you going to tell me? That the Mekabel Matana is not around. If the Mekabel Matana is not around, then Hachanami, the lesser the Mekabel Matana. So the same thing is why he couldn't do Chalipin. You're asking me if the actual items were there, why does he need Kinagav? Let him use Kinyan Chalipin. You know why he can't do Kinyan Chalipin? Because the receiver is not there to do the Chalipin. Frag the Gemara, but when this Kinu Nehalei Agav Acher. In order to do the Chalipin, does the actual purchaser have to be there to do the Chalipin, to give me the Shmata, so that he could be kind of all my Nechosim in lieu of that Shmata? Why can't he be Mamana Shliach? Let me just take any old person and say, you'll be Zoicha on behalf of the recipient of the gift. You give me your Shmata, you give me your Gartel, and through that, I will be Makna all of these Nechosim to the recipient. Zog to Gemara, Loi Sam Chadaite. When it comes, he won't do it. Why? He won't, by mominus, by cash, it will be Loi Sam Chadaite. The gifter does not want to have somebody else be kind of for him, because Savar Shamit Va'achalahu. What's going to happen is as follows: if you're going to say that it's the actual nechasim there I have a good kasha. Give it to him b'mashicha. He's not around, so have someone be in his place. Someone be zoichet for your recipient b'mashicha. But if it's the actual kesef itself, there it makes sense to say why I wouldn't want to do that. The kesef itself, you have to be koina with Mashiach. If it cannot be the metalton itself, because if it was the metalton itself, I could have been makna the metalton to whoever I want to, using the shliach with kinyan chalipin, that is, using kinyan chalipin. But if it's the actual cash, I can't use kinyan chalipin. I would have had to use Mashiach. Mashiach, I don't want someone to be koined on behalf of my friend. Because think about it, I have $1 million. I'm going to tell some stranger, be koined on behalf of my friend. Once I put the money in your hands, boom, you could run away with it. And it might never reach the destination. By kinyan chalipin, if it was actual animals, and it was kinyan chalipin, I'm never giving you any grasp of the animals. All I'm doing is I'm picking up your shmata that you gave me, and through that, I'll be marking the animals to whichever person I want to give it to. There's never a risk. So therefore, Zok Gemara, you have Uriah. You have Uriah. It has to be speaking where it's cash and not the actual products are there. Because if the actual products are there, he would never have needed Kinyan Agav. He could have been maknid to his friend using a shliach with Kinyan Chalipin. And there would be a very good comfort level. Because when I'm doing Kinyan Chalipin through a third party, I'm never giving the third party anything. I'm just lifting up his garter. So the goods are safe. Mashenkin, if it's cash, I couldn't have used Mashiach. You know why? Because that means I have to let him take the cash in his hands. I don't trust him. I don't want him to take the cash in his hands. So therefore, it's got to be speaking in the case of cash, and that's why they were forced to rely on. They were forced to rely on the Kinyan Agav. But once again, it doesn't prove anything because maybe the cash was on the piece of property. Now, the Tosfos makes a huge deal out of this because it sounds from the Gemara, based on this Girsha, how we've just read it, that Kinyan Chalipin does not have to be done by the person himself. You can have a shliach. For instance, when I sell my chametz to the Rav, sometimes I'm asked by somebody else to sell his chametz for him. You could appoint a shliach to sell your chametz for him. So you're making not only the Kinyan Chalipin with the Rav for your own chametz, you're actually doing it on behalf of somebody else. So Tosfos actually brings a raya from our Gemara that Kinyan Chalipin works even though somebody else is actually doing it for you. In other words, Kinyan Chalipin works through a shliach. That's a huge controversy because there was another Girsha in our Gemara where the conclusion would be that you couldn't do it. And Tosfos just says, from that other Girsha, Mikan Medaktik Rab Shmaya, the ein moil kinyan suder ela b'fnei hakoyin. Chalipin only works if it's the purchaser himself doing it. It won't work with a shliach shlakach lehikna loy b'chalipin. That's why they didn't use chalipin. Shalichaya moil klum. But upela gadol haya beini riban sharei maisin b'chol yoim shekoyin b'suder shaloi b'fnei hakoyin hamakabel matal. You find it very common in Tosha brings many rise. In fact, that chalipin does work, even though it's a third party doing it, and we know that we do it as well when we're selling someone else's chametz. We're doing a kinyan chalipin on behalf of the other person. So the Tosha's conclusion is, in fact, that avada kinyan chalipin does work, even though it's done by a third party, as also it seems so from our Gemara. So once again, we don't have a raya. Does kinyan agav has to be piled up or not? Zok to Gemara, l'sam chadaite, to let someone else make a meshicha. Savar shamit va'achalu. I'm afraid once I give you the cash, you'll run away with the money. Frank the Gemara. So you're telling me that technically he could have did kinyan meshicha. It was his own juk in his head that I'm afraid I don't trust you. You'll run away with the money. But technically it works. So velamai ein loy takana. Why does the Brisa say ein loy takana ella with Agav? He could have done kesef. He just says doesn't want it. So tomorrow hakagamar lamai l'sam chadaite, being that he has this concern, so his only option that remains ein loy takana achi yikneim al gabekar. Tashma, let's try one more raya to see if we can prove whether or not. This is more of an involved raya, so we'll stop here. So Bez Hashem, I asked Rabbi Vom Weisbrod to give shir on Shabbos, so he'll be giving shir on Shabbos. We're going to repeat the shir Matzah Shabbos. I made a survey, and only one person answered, and that is, would you rather learn right after Shabbos, or would you rather learn an hour before Slichos?
I also replied before Slichos.
Oh, you did? And what did you reply?
I agree with Dave. Before Slichos.
So then, once I get the schedule, I'll see what time Slichos is. And should we learn an hour before Slichos, or should we learn, let's say, an hour and 15 minutes before Slichos? Because you'll still need time to get the shul.
I was going to say, you're still going to be there.
Correct.
So, we could set up the TV in shul, so we could. And then
okay, so then we'll do it in an hour before Slichos. This way, you don't have to come that early. You could still get some Z's in before
Roy
Slichos.
Says 1:15 a.m. I'm assuming that's the time for Slichos.
Right. So should we learn at midnight?
Midnight. Let's say midnight.
Okay, we'll learn at midnight.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful, wonderful Shabbos.
Shabbos.